everybody. This is Jackie Luqman.
And I'm at the Shahid Luqman.
There he is.
Hey.
Over there. There you go. Wave again. And tonight is Thursday, May 3rd, and we are coming to you live from Washington, D.C., and this is Coffee, Current Events, and Politics live in Luqman Nation.
The most dangerous show on the internet.
And tonight, I think, is one of those nights where we're really going to live up to that reputation, because the research that we've been doing this week to prepare for this show has made, I know it's made me emotional.
Yes.
And you haven't seen everything.
No.
That I pulled together for it, but at this time, I think I've only got like 3 pertinent sources for you guys. One of which is obviously the report from Duke University that we've been talking about for a few weeks. What we get wrong about closing the racial wealth gap. We're going to address another myth that's addressed in that report. But of course, the events on social media in this week that happened this week do play into this show tonight. So, listen, you guys, get a drink, invite your friends, share the videos on Facebook, on YouTube. I got to clean my glasses because I just smudged them. Share the videos on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Periscope. This is a really, really important conversation we need to have, because if we don't get this history straight, I think that we are going to be doomed economically as a people.
I think so. I think you're right.
I really do, because we've got some really ignorant people giving too many young people advice about economics.
I mean, people that have big platforms.
Enormous
exactly.
platforms. So, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your support of Luqman Nation. I hope you've watched the videos we've done earlier this week. We had a busy week.
Yes.
We stood in solidarity with the people of Odessa, Ukraine. That's right. Yesterday. It was just the two of us. We were in front of the embassy of Ukraine in Georgetown in Washington, D.C., and we were actually on the steps of the embassy. So we got the Secret Service police called on us. That video is on our page. Please watch that video.
We are official.
We are.
Yes.
We are official. We did our regular segment, our regular weekly segment at Loud and Clear today instead of on Friday like we usually do, because tomorrow we're going to be out of town. But tomorrow we are going to be guests on By Any Means Necessary. We're going to have to Skype in, but we'll be on with them from 3 to 4 p.m., I think.
Yes, and that's on Sputnik.
And that's on Sputnik Radio. What else did we do this week? Oh, we had church stuff that we can't talk about.
Right, yeah.
We can't talk about that, but that was a whole lot. But we got a lot of content on our page, a lot of video content on our page, so please check that out, share that around. Always remember that you can support Luqman Nation monetarily. We understand that everybody's tight. Any little bit helps. You can support us monthly through becoming a Patreon. You can support us with a one-time donation on our GoFundMe or through PayPal, and you can find us on all of those platforms under Luqman Nation, Luqman Nation. Saying hi to Scully over there on YouTube, and there are 6 other people lurking.
Oh, and also, if you're new and you haven't subscribed,
thank you. Subscribe to subscribe to us on YouTube, and join us on Saturday nights at 9:30 p.m. for our other show, Pitbull in Politics, featuring the Pitbull of Politics.
That's right, your boy right here. Holla.
That show is adult content, and it is not streamed live. It is only on Spreaker. Let's get to the business at hand, shall we?
Shall we?
All right, so this week, you all, we heard from Kanye West and his sage advice, his free thinking advice about slavery, and I'm not even going to address that part of his comments, because we've seen people trying to justify and trying to be...
I mean, taking extraordinary leaps to try to make some sense out of that stuff, man.
Yeah, I mean, it has been amazing to watch people do everything in their power to try to explain what they think was going on in Kanye West's head. I don't even understand why you'd want to. But okay, well, we're not even going to address the slavery part of his comments. I want to talk about this. We want to talk about this tonight. Let me see. I keep forgetting not to do that before I click on an article. Sorry about that.
Look, they know what kind of budget we working with.
Listen here, it's been a long week.
Our audience understand. They know what budget we working with here.
It's been a long week. We're tired. It's 9 o'clock on a Thursday. Woo! All right. So this is a synopsis of Kanye's tweets that's reported in page 6. The article says Kanye West responds to outrage over slavery comments. So this is what we want to talk about tonight. Kanye said, "We need to update our conversation," he said, noting how he knew the TMZ interview would be awesome. "The reason why I brought up the 400 years point is because we can't be mentally imprisoned for another 400 years. We need free thought now. Even the statement was an example of free thought. It was just an idea." The rapper went on to claim that he was once again being attacked for presenting new ideas. Tonight, we are going to show you why nothing Kanye West has said is not only not free thought, that he's not presenting new ideas, and it doesn't even make logical sense. It's completely false. His ideas are ridiculous. This is why. He also said, "In school, we need to learn how Magic Johnson built his business, not always about the past. Matter of fact, I've never even heard of a high school class that presents future ideas," West said. "When the media masses and scholars talk about what started today, here's a title, The Overground Hell Road." That's a play on, that's supposed to be a play on the Underground Railroad. And I need to click off this before I call him a name. But I just want to highlight this part right here. Oops, not the whole thing. This part right here. Because this is where the bullshit is.
Right.
And this is why. He's talking about Magic Johnson, who owns a string of movie theaters. He also owns some Starbucks franchises.
Yeah, he got his hand in everything.
He's got his hand in everything, and Magic Johnson is doing a great idea, doing a great job as an investor and an entrepreneur, and that's great, wonderful, and fabulous. And if you go on Kanye West's Twitter feed, I'm just saying, I'm not telling you to do it because I don't want to subject our friends to that type of mental torture. I'm just saying, for context, go on his Twitter feed and find that tweet where he says kids in school need to learn about Magic Johnson. And look at all the responses from the people to that one tweet.
Wow. And
look at the people who are responding. Like, look at the avatars of these people. Most of them are white people.
Yeah, the MAGA people.
The Make America Great. See, ever since Kanye said this ignorance,
right,
he's gotten this influx of followers who are Trump supporters.
Who really don't give a damn about him, really.
Don't give a damn about him. Don't give a damn about us. Don't give a damn about the history that we have endured in this country. But they're glad that he's telling black people stop talking about slavery.
Right.
That's what they're glad about. He is such a free thinker, and it's annoying that people are parroting this term free thinker as if it's supposed to mean he somehow is coming up with some type of intellectual thought process that nobody else has ever. Lord have mercy, I can't.
But yet, but yet at the same time, what we're saying here is that type of ignorance shouldn't be applauded.
No, and let's get into why that type of ignorance shouldn't be applauded. So he got all these people talking about, that's right, Magic Johnson is a great success story. Yes, he's a great investor. He's got hundreds of millions of dollars in investments. You cannot use Magic Johnson as the example that you give to black people in America for how to be an entrepreneur, because Magic Johnson started his business, his Magic Johnson Enterprises, off of NBA money.
Right, exactly.
Okay, here, this article is, let me see where it is, and we're going to give you the links to all of these from Entrepreneur Magazine, Magic Johnson, the businessman behind the basketball legend. This was written in 2014. Magic Johnson began his, started his Magic Johnson Enterprises in 1987, 9 years before he ended his career in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
That is important. There we go. This is very important while he was still active in the NBA. Why is this important? Let me tell you why. Because Magic Johnson possessed a specific set of unique, and I'm so glad you brought this word up earlier, exceptional skills.
Right. That's right.
Magic Johnson's skills on the court weren't just specific. They weren't just special. They weren't just unique. His skills were exceptional. He didn't just excel in basketball in high school. He excelled to the point where he was selected for a scholarship to college, where he also excelled in college. And he excelled to the point that he was selected for an NBA team. There's a whole lot of kids out on basketball courts across this country playing basketball.
Hoping to be the next Magic Johnson.
Hoping to be the next man. Half these kids don't know who Magic Johnson is, and that's a doggone shame. But hoping to be the next Magic Johnson.
Right.
The next Magic Johnson caliber player.
Right.
Most of those kids playing basketball on those courts, doesn't matter how good they are, they're not exceptional. And here's the thing, a lot of those kids actually are exceptional, but because scouts aren't going like to the hood, to the neighborhood basketball courts like they used to at Rucker Park in New York City, there are a select few places in the country where amateur basketball leagues exist, where maybe a high school kid could get picked out like that. Most exceptional, uniquely talented kids, black or white, are not going to get selected. They're just gonna go on. If they go to college, they're gonna go to college. They might be good enough to get a scholarship to go to college if they're using, relying on a full ride athletic scholarship.
But most of those kids are going to be hood legends.
Come on, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Most of these kids, as good as they are, and many of us who grew up in the inner city, we know these kids, and we can always go back and be like, yo, I remember my man, this is my man, that. Most of our kids who are very good at basketball are going to have a better shot at being hood legends than going to the NBA.
Right. So then you've got kids who are in college and they're playing in the NCAA. They are good enough to be on a team that might be televised on the televised games in the NCAA. Most college basketball teams are not. And there are some phenomenal players on a lot of those teams. Most people in this country don't see most of those kids play. That we're talking about the top tier schools.
Right.
That people watch on Saturday afternoons during, for the NCAA basketball tournaments. And most of those kids who play for those teams, as exceptional as most of them are, most of them won't even get drafted for the NBA. So do you understand how uniquely, specifically, exceptionally talented you have to be in Magic Johnson's position in the first place.
Right.
We're not even talking about the money now. We're just talking about the fact that the reason Magic Johnson was able to start Magic Johnson Enterprises was because he was exceptionally skilled enough to be selected to the NBA, and that is incredibly rare.
Exactly.
So he was able to make his money to start his company off of something that 99% of these talented basketball dribbling black kids are not going to be able to make their money off of. And we're not just talking about basketball. Football, writing, acting, computer programming, I don't care what it is. Most black kids are exceptional and uniquely talented at. Most people in general are not going to be able to make millions of dollars off of their unique talent. That's just...
And most of the people that do make it are not always the most talented.
Oh.
You know, so I mean, so it's not talent that always earn you the big bucks. Half the time, most of the people that we see acting, most of the people that we see on the basketball court and the NBA are really not the most talented out there. They were the ones that were just chosen.
They just got lucky.
Yeah, right. And there is a such thing as luck.
Yeah, and many of those people will even tell you that, look, I just got lucky. I wasn't the smartest, I wasn't the best, I wasn't the brightest. I was just in the right place at the right time.
So Magic, how do you make his money?
So Magic Johnson made his money. Let's go back to this article. Magic Johnson made his money starting in the NBA with sprawling interests including Aspire, a television network, Magic Johnson Bridgescape Academies, which helps high school dropouts get diplomas, Clear Health Alliance, which helps provide health care for HIV/AIDS patients, and that's all great stuff. You know, he owns the movie theaters. We have a Magic Johnson movie theater near us that we go to a lot. He owns some Starbucks franchises. Earlier, a month before this article was written, Johnson became an investor and board member for the Marvel Experience, a traveling entertainment show that includes an animated 4D and multimedia heavy adventure featuring Marvel superheroes. Look,
all right, so this brother got some bank.
He's got some bank.
Okay, he got some bank. We declared that he got some bank.
We got some bank, and he got his bank legitimately, and nobody's mad at Magic because he got this bank. That's great. But the key is he had to have investment money to make this kind of money.
Right. Well, that's the way it is.
And he got that investment money through the NBA.
I mean, all that stuff about, you know, going out in your yard and hunting a squirrel and shooting in the ground and some oil come up. That don't happen for most of us.
That does not happen for that don't happen for most white people. It sure ain't gonna happen for most black people. But here is the part of Magic Johnson's story that puts him in a class that I'm calling the Black Bourgeoisie.
Okay.
This right here, y'all. Johnson wrote in his memoir, My Life, Johnson's father initially served as inspiration for his business prowess. This is where the bullshit is also. Mm-hmm. Dad didn't believe in handouts, Johnson wrote, so as a kid, the only way I could get my hands on any spending money was to go out and earn it.
Respectability. I see it coming.
Listen. These black people who have made their millions and billions in this vulture capitalistic market, and it really is when it comes to black people, who turn around and tell black people, well, the reason I made all this money was because my parents instilled in me a strong work ethic, and they told me that we don't accept handouts. You got chose, Negro. I mean, listen, that's just the honest to God's truth. You got chose over a bunch of other kids who some people might have argued somewhere else that were as good as you, but you just happened to get chose by the LA Lakers. So for him to equate his ability to amass the kind of money in the NBA with his father's sage advice of not accepting handouts, that's that is just intellectually dishonest. And for too long, black people have been falling for this garbage from people like Magic Johnson and Kanye West, telling us that all we need to do is change our mindset and work hard and free ourselves from mental slavery and not accept handouts. See, this discussion about black economics, not black capitalism, but black economics.
No, black capitalism is what we're going to talk about in a little bit. But I think one of the things that we see, even though we're not beating up on Magic Johnson, it's the same thing of shaming poor black people without connecting it historically. In fact, you know what? You know who could explain this better?
Who?
Glenn Ford of Black Agenda Report.
Okay.
In dealing and talking with Cosby. He wrote about people like Cosby, because Cosby's part of that black bourgeoisie.
Uh-huh.
He's part of that group that have a disdain for poor black people. But there's a particular paragraph in here that I like to read in Glenn Ford's essay. And he says, the harsh material and structural racist reality of American society interacts with time-worn, victim-blaming, ruling class explanations of poverty to play an ugly game on the nation's most truly disadvantaged. They are expected to magically leap beyond their social historical circumstances, to exercise an inordinately high degree of sound personal responsibility just to keep their heads above water, while others are structurally empowered to pass go and collect $2 million when you're playing for the NBA, when you're a famous comedian, when you're Oprah, and you have all this other stuff. So it says to go past go and collect $2 million without such exercise, and indeed to deepen the well of black disadvantage. If huge numbers of black people could be drawn together to figure out precisely how we have failed each other, that would be one hell of a social responsibility conversation. But the Bill Cosbys of the community cannot be allowed to hog the microphone just because they may have, and we can replace Bill Cosby with Kanye West. But the Bill Cosbys / Kanye West / this, that, and the other / of the community cannot be allowed to hog the microphone just because they may have paid for it. As journalist, educator, lawyer, activist Liz Brown says, that doesn't give him a license. And this is the same thing that we said about even Kanye West. That I don't care how much good hip-hop music he puts out. I don't care about the Yeezy sneakers, and that's what they call them. I don't care about all of the stuff that he has accomplished in those areas. That does not give him, like it didn't give Cosby or anybody else, a right to think that they can beat up on poor black people, especially when they don't have the historical knowledge and to go along with that. You know, to just sit back and throw at us, throw at poor black people the same old black respectability of talking points, which has its origins in white supremacy and has its origins in the pseudo science of racial contextuality.
Yes.
And we talked about that. That this has its roots in this pseudoscience which came out of the Enlightenment, which classified people and based upon this made up context or this made up thing of race.
This made up construct.
Right, this construct of race, and not only made up construct of race, but this pseudoscience. It's not even a science. And went further by taking Darwinian principles, because Darwin came out of that, of Darwinian principles, and trying to stretch Darwinian principles, which have not been proven and still haven't been proven, into this so-called a category of science, pseudoscience, which now apply behavior through the lenses of white supremacy on groups of people around the world. And we are still carrying that even today, but we call it respectability politics.
Exactly. That is exactly what it is. And you talked about Kanye West and Magic Johnson and Bill Cosby and Boyce Watkins and Dr. Claude Anderson and all these entrepreneur pushers continue to push this brand of entrepreneurial respectability doctrine onto black people, and they do it without the context of history. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. So let's start with this. Let's start with our favorite report. What we get wrong about closing the racial wealth gap. I'm going to start right on the page because you know what the cover looks like by now. We've been talking about it for 3 weeks.
Right.
So, you know that this report is from Sandy Darity, Derek Hamilton, Alan Adjett, and several other brilliant people at Duke University. And this report is amazing. The link is actually already on the YouTube channel, so you guys can access it already. But if you Google this, social equality Duke .duke.edu, you can pull it up right now. And yes, we're going to give you a link to it again on Facebook. But I'm going to start right on the page where I want to begin this discussion about the history that is so important to this discussion about why black people starting businesses is not going to fix this. Now, let's talk about the fact that entrepreneurship requires startup capital.
For the most part, yeah.
Okay, so let's see.
Like I said, we're not going out in the woods anymore and striking the dirt and then, you know, some oil comes up.
Right.
Or, you know, this gold rock under the ground.
First of all, let's start here. When we compile the data, even those members of marginalized communities who manage to enter into entrepreneurship largely fail. Remember that most small businesses fail anyway.
Right.
All of them. But for members of minority communities, the failure rates among entrepreneurs is astronomical. This is due to a number of factors ranging from undercapitalization. Again, you need money to start a small business.
Right, that's right.
Limited market access. We're going to talk about market access and market saturation and monopolization in a minute. Or outright theft or destruction. Let's stay right there for a second.
Right.
Because a lot of these black bourgeoisie folks, these entrepreneur pushers, say things like, if black people would only start their own business, we could fight this white supremacist system. And they say that out of the context of as if black people never started, like we never figured out how to start our own business.
Right, they found the Holy Grail.
They found the Holy Grail that Negroes have just never ever done before in our whole entire existence.
Right.
Well, last week we talked about some historical points, and we went back actually farther than our friends here did, because they say in this report, blacks are far less likely to own a business, and for blacks that do own a business, they have far less equity. Again, capital.
And we explain why that is.
Right. Black business literally has been annihilated. It's not that black people never started businesses. It's not that we don't know that we need to start businesses. It's that every time black people in communities built their communities and started their businesses, they were annihilated. They say in this report nearly as often as it has sprouted in America, dating back to the Tulsa Massacre of 1921. But we talked about a massacre that happened in 1919.
Right, exactly. Yep.
And then really, if you want to go back farther than that, to the creation and then the insolvency of the Freedmen's Bank. Let's be clear. Black economic success has always been a threat to white American business owners, to the point that they would lynch black people who were business owners who were in competition with them.
Right, and they just have a new lynching memorial down, I believe, in Alabama.
Yes.
That explains all of that.
Yes. So we're not talking about black people who just don't know that we should start our businesses. A part of the reason Black America has such a weak entrepreneur sector is because for many decades our businesses were destroyed by white people. I mean directly, right? Then we're going to talk about the fact that the data points to a really horrible picture in regard to the diversity of the market. So the report says that over 90% of Latino and Black firms do not have even one employee other than the owner.
Well, we know that from just walking around our neighborhood. You got a bunch of beauty shops, barber shops. You know, I mean, we're not employing people on a large scale.
Exactly. The proportion of owner-only firms reaches a high of close to 98% for the subgroup of Black female-led businesses. So all this talk about the success of Black women starting businesses, that's great and wonderful. That's fine. That's fabulous. But these people their businesses are not large enough to employ Black people.
Right.
They're not, and they don't make enough money. They don't have enough share of the market for receipts. They don't make enough profit. They don't have enough cash flow to employ other people. That's almost every Black-owned woman business. Mm-hmm. So, just on that front, entrepreneurship is not going to save Black people. But let's go further. Excuse me. Let's see. I have done page 35. I'm sorry. Let me go down to page 35. Oh, no, I'm sorry. No. Where is that one example that I had with the owners? Oh, here we go. This is where I meant to start. I apologize. Startup capital. Mm-hmm. Levin and Rubenstein have shown that the significant edge in entrepreneurship held by white males originates in their serendipitous birth. They won the birth lottery. Just like Magic Johnson, Scully said over on YouTube that Magic Johnson won the birth lottery for his exceptional skills for genetics.
Right.
He won the genetics lottery because and gave him these exceptional skills in basketball. Well, people like Mark Zuckerberg won the economic lottery, birth lottery. Because people are looking at him as a success, and it blows my mind that people call him self-made, but he started Facebook with working capital from his father in 2004.
Oh, that sounds familiar. Donald Trump.
Donald Trump with a small loan of $1 million. And then in 2000, and then his father got shares in Facebook in exchange. That's the kind of economic and social capital that white people have.
Right.
Right? With another example, Jeff Bezos. People look at him and he started Amazon started as a small company. Amazon started as a small company in 1994 with a $300,000 loan from his parents. So the idea that Black people, who we talked about last week and the week before, a group of people who 25% of us are poor. And that even though the unemployment rate is at, 6% now?
Well, for Blacks it's supposed to be 4%.
4%. But we all know that people who are chronically unemployed and have been for some time aren't even counted. That was the same issue that people had with Obama when the unemployment numbers were dropping under his administration. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember.
Every time the jobs reports would come out and the unemployment rates would be lower than they were for the last quarter, these conservatives would always say, well, what about the people who aren't even being reported anymore,
or
who've dropped out of the job market, or the people who are looking for work? Well, the same questions apply now. The very same questions. And it's critically important to remember those questions when we're talking about the monopolization of the market that actually helped to destroy Black businesses. So let's go into that. This is a very long article, and I've highlighted a lot of stuff. I probably won't even get into everything. That's why I'm going to give it to you for homework to read it yourself. But we've got to go through this. This is an article from last year, The Decline of Black Businesses in Washington Monthly. And this is why print media and independent journalists and freedom of the press is so incredibly important. Because the Washington Post wasn't going to do a story like this. The New York Times wasn't going to do a story like this. But a smaller monthly magazine that focuses on business interests did. And the information they have in this article is just incredibly critical to understanding why these black bourgeoisie, black capitalist pushers need to stop.
Exactly.
All right, so let me try to stick to my notes so I don't go wander off all over the place like y'all know I can do. The very first thing I want you to understand about black businesses and the history of black businesses, that the last 30 years, according to this article, has brought the wholesale collapse of black-owned independent businesses and financial institutions that once anchored black communities across the country. In 1985, we're not talking about 200 years ago. We're not talking about 1921 now. Mm-hmm. We're talking about 1985.
Yeah, like 33 years ago.
60 black-owned banks were providing financial services to their communities. Today, this was as of May of last year, just 23 remain.
Now, how do you get that kind of number in so short of a time? Because, I mean, 30 years is not a long time.
There is a direct correlation between these drastic numbers and the reduction of black-owned banks and insurance companies and politics. So these black bourgeoisie, black capitalist pushers who tell black people that all they need to do is start their own business and they don't have to worry about politics, they are ignorant.
And they really, and not only are they ignorant, but they're also hurting us. Because what happens is that we start to believe that.
Yes.
And then we start to internalize that there's something wrong with us. Mm-hmm. You know, when you got people like the Magic Johnsons and the Kanyes and everyone else sitting up talking about the Dr. Claude Andersons and the Boyce Watkins, mm-hmm. when they're starting to tell us, well, you know, all you need to do is this and you don't need politics and we can do for self. And then when we look at our own individual lives and find out, well, why it's not working for me?
Right.
You know, and because they're not connecting it to history, because they're not connecting it to systemic racism, and they're not looking at the structural racisms that prevent most of us from being able to achieve those things, then we start to internalize their shaming and say, well, then there's got to be something wrong with us. Mm-hmm. You know, and then so we as poor black people go around, or some of us that got a little bit of a little bit more than breakfast money. You know, as my grandfather used to say.
$5, was it 5 cents over breakfast money?
Yeah, N-word rich, as they say. So, you know, we got a little bit of cash. Then all of a sudden now we're looking around and we start to perpetuate and pass on the same misinformation, the same shaming tactics that were given to us. So now we're sitting here on social media, not having no education or knowledge of what we're talking about. And then we start saying, well, you know, there is some truth in what Kanye said. Or, you know, oh, that's true. Why is it that, you know, all the businesses around me are ran by somebody else? These are legitimate questions to ask. I'm not saying that. But what we're saying is the fact that those people who are hawking black capitalism without first putting it in proper context. There's nothing wrong with black capitalism in the sense. Let me clarify that. Mm-hmm, There's nothing wrong with black-owned businesses, with people wanting to own business. I used to have my own little trucking thing, so you know, I have some experience with that. But there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, to present that to politically and economically powerless people as a solution to their oppression is highly irresponsible.
It's incredibly irresponsible, especially when we look at the actual history and we see the connection that black business owners made with politics themselves.
Right.
So let's go through this. I'm going to try to go through this kind of quick because I'm going to give you the links to this article so you can read it yourself. All right. So the other part of this block right here, in 11 states that headquartered black-owned banks in 1994, dang, that's even later than 1985, not a single one is still in business. From 94, the headquarters, Those banks that had headquarters in 11 states, none of those banks were in business in 2017.
Wow.
Of the 50 black-owned insurance companies that operated during the 1980s, today, just 2 remain. Now, these are black-owned businesses. Over the same period,
But look down before you continue.
Okay.
You can't have it both ways.
Oh.
No, the reason why I say it is because we'll sit up here and say, well, the reason why we're oppressed is because we haven't started our own businesses, and we need to be like everybody else and start our own businesses. And so you're presenting to me, Boyce Watkins and Claude Anderson and everybody else about how you're much better than me, and you found the promised land through black businesses. But the data shows that most of the black businesses, especially the ones that existed, as what you're showing us in the data. So what that mean? That y'all don't know how to run a black business? What I'm saying is we can't have it both ways.
Right.
We can't shame poor black people for not buying into the black entrepreneurial gospel. But then at the same time, the data is showing that those who bought into the gospel are not succeeding.
Oh.
So what are we going to do with that information?
Oh, I'm going to show you what we do with that information, because there's an answer to that. There's actually an answer to that. So here it says in the article, over the same period, tens of thousands of black-owned retail establishments and local service companies also have disappeared between 1985 and 2017. Having gone out of business or been acquired by larger companies. That's why they disappeared. That is the major reason people have not paid attention to why all these black businesses failed. Because see, what a part of this discourse has been that the uprisings in the late 60s after Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination and during that summer of uprisings, well, that's when most of the black businesses were destroyed. That's a lie. That is an ahistorical lie. Because black entrepreneurship wasn't thriving, but it was more healthy than it is today back in 1985. And since 1985, all of these black businesses, not just churches, not just hair salons and barbershops, but banks, insurance companies, retail establishments, service companies, even funeral homes, have all disappeared. And it wasn't things to black people like, y'all need to get off the white man's plantation and own your own business. Y'all need to, stop working for the white man and own your own business. That's the only way you're going to get yourself out of this wage slavery. Black people used to have our own businesses that were large enough to employ other black people. But because of politics, those businesses were targeted by venture monopolies that literally swallowed them up.
Okay.
So,
well, we have one question.
Okay.
All right. Shamir. Hi, Shamir. That's my daughter, y'all.
Hey.
She asked the question, could the data show that the road may be the business, but they didn't have an overall view of progression for black people? It was an individualized approach, to say my family, my neighborhood, and using the gimmick of being a black business, making it look like it was for the people, but it wasn't. Could have caused the demise of these businesses and left us as a whole deficient.
No, and I'm going to show you why. A case in point is the decline of black-owned financial institutions, including banks and insurance companies. Now, none of these institutions said we will only take black people's money. We are only going to insure black people.
Right.
None of them said that. Mainstream insurers went after black insurance companies for their top personnel to sell their products. It didn't have anything to do with black insurance companies not understanding the market.
Right.
This came from Wichita State Professor Robert Weems Jr. When MetLife bought United Mutual Life Insurance Company, I remember United Mutual Life because my grandmother had a United Mutual Life Insurance policy. In 1993, this was the end of the 63-year existence of the black-owned insurance company in the Northeast.
My mother and grandmother had United too. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Black Enterprise called the 1990s a virtual bloodbath for the black insurance industry, noting that from 1989 to 1990, the number of black-owned insurers declined by 68%. Here's another example, which I think is actually a better example. If you are old enough, I hope this... No, you can't do that. All right, you can't see that. If you are old enough to remember Park Sausage... And I know that Shamir is not old enough to remember Park Sausage.
I don't think so.
No, but I do. And for those of you who are in the 50-ish range and who live on the Atlantic seaboard in the
More
north,
Park Sausages, Mom.
That's
please.
it. Now that was a commercial that was on television and on radio. Park Sausages were not marketed to black people,
right?
Specifically.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know Park Sausage was a black-owned company. I did not
know that either. But I didn't know.
All we ate in our house was Park Sausage, and when we had a little extra to go above the store brand.
Right, right.
But I did not know that Park Sausage was a black-owned company. It was sausage.
Me neither. Yep.
So Park Sausage, which many readers of a certain age may remember for its jingle,
"More Park Sausages, Mom. Please,"
also serves as an example of how market concentration led to the decline of black-owned independent businesses. Founded in 1951 by Henry Parks Jr., the Baltimore-based company grew into a multi-million-dollar operation. So they knew what they were doing.
So they knew how to sell sausage.
They knew how to sell some sausage to some people. Selling pork, and not just sausage, because they sold other pork products. Yeah. The largest meat packers controlled 78% of the market. As Harris put it, before selling out, it's been hard to get distribution. One other example, much of the same story occurs with black-owned groceries. You didn't know there were a bunch of black-owned grocery stores, did you? No, I know you did.
Right.
But I'm talking about people who are watching our show right now who are 30 and under.
30 and under,
You don't know that there were black-owned grocery stores pretty much dotting the country.
Right.
Especially on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
In 1969, J. Bruce Llewellyn grew 10 Bronx supermarkets into the nation's largest minority-owned retail business. He knew what he was doing. He wasn't limiting his customer base to just black people.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't saying, I'm just going to sell these groceries to these black folk. No. By the 1990s, however, a retreat from antitrust enforcement, here's the key. A retreat from antitrust enforcement and other fair trade laws permitted a few giant corporations like Walmart to engage in anti-competitive behaviors that in previous decades would have resulted in civil and criminal prosecution. These included undermining the pricing power of suppliers and loss leading, or the practice of selling below cost in order to drive competitors out of business.
And we I mean, now they have a term for that. They call that the Walmartization. Walmartization, right? But again, we see that a lot of these things took place during the Reagan years.
That's right. They started during the Reagan years.
During the Reagan years. And they started during the time of deregulation.
Mm-hmm.
They started during the time when government was becoming more and more friendlier to corporate power.
Right. Yeah.
And that's important, because if we're going to sit up here and talk about history, then we need to tie that in. Why is it in that time period? Why during that time period we see this major loss of black businesses? And why? Are we not surprised that this started with the trickle down man, Ronald Reagan?
Come on.
So so we need to really understand. So when we get up here and we start talking to poor black people about, the reason why y'all poor is because you don't know how to have a business, or we fail to tell the whole truth about needing capital in order to start a business. You know, I see a lot of people that talk about building black businesses, but they never tell you the whole truth. They never tell you that you need capital to start the business. And they never go further by saying that if you come from an economically depressed demographic like we are, and we said time and time again on here about the racial wealth gap. So you fail, and we just said this on the show, you fail the first year, which most businesses do. The first 5 years, businesses fail. So here you are coming from a group of people that don't have the money anyway.
Right.
So you fail in your first 5 years. Where you going to get the money to start again? You know, especially when you're dealing with banks, and we already talked about the way that black banks have, black businesses have shrank. Now work with me now.
That's right.
How they have shrank. So now you don't even have the amount of black banks anymore.
That's right.
And you have black banks that's not holding the type of capital that Wells Fargo have, or that you know, TD Bank has, or offer the services that these other banks have. So then they tell you, they say, well then, you know, we need the bank black, but we have a black bank, and we can tell you they don't offer the same services as the larger banks offer.
Right.
So they're not telling the truth. Once again, it's presenting this false narrative to poor black people. I call it snake oil, because that's what it is. You don't tell the whole truth. You say, look at me. Look, I'm prosperous. Look at me.
Right.
And you could be like me. I still have yet to see, and I got this from Yvette Carnell, because I couldn't believe that I didn't see it either. That I haven't seen one millionaire yet that Boyce Watkins produced.
Not one.
You know, I haven't seen one yet. And so what happens is that we tell all of these poor black people who are struggling day to day, first of the month is when they can really let loose. And then we shame them for that.
Right.
So we got all of this shaming stuff, and then we talk about, well, you know, if you could just open up a business and do this and do that, but they never tell you the road to do that. Exactly. And they will, but you got to pay for it. And then if you pay for it out of your food stamps or your child support or whatever you're going to get,
it is.
And after you pay for it and sacrifice to pay for it, they give you all of this, what I call life coach stuff. And then after that happens, they never take you through what you really need to do. And they're never honest with you about the real term of cost. Of when I had look, I was owner operator. And what killed me in business, and I enjoyed it, but what killed me in business was I did not have the capital to stay on board. I did not have the capital to cut. One truck tire that blew out on me would cost me $600. You know, if I had any repairs on my tractor, if I had any repairs, I mean permits or whatever I had to do as an owner operator, it costs. So the amount of money, that I put to the side that I thought that was going to cover those costs was never enough. And then I got hit with something that was beyond my control. It was during the time when diesel fuel was like $6 a gallon. So when you got a 1,000-gallon tank like I had, I mean, come on. So, I mean, and then let's not mention that the people that I'm running for, they never increased their fuel surcharges that are supposed to offset the cost of me.
Right, so you didn't make any more money.
No, they never raised the rates of carrying their freight. You know, so most of the cost was borne on me, a small one-man operation, black business owner.
Right.
You know, so what we're saying is that they never give you the full story on how to do this stuff. And what's happening is it's turning out people. It's a cruel game.
How do you mean?
It's a cruel game because you see people, when I say selling hope, and we talked about this on the show.
Yep.
And you find people who are desperate because this system is not capable of providing the opportunities that we all need. It's not capable. So what happens and when I mean not capable, what I mean is the way that it's operating now.
Right.
We can make it capable, but we haven't organized to that point yet.
Right.
But the way that it is now, it isn't capable of providing for the needs of everybody. So what happens is you got folks grabbing at straws. trying to make it, believing in these old entrepreneur hustlers and pushers, and who aren't telling the truth. I'm not talking about the legit ones out there that's really trying to mentor you along. I'm talking about those ones who see the desperation of poor black people and they shame them into leaving your job and leaving what little support you do have, and you're supposed to trust me that I'm going to lead you to the promised land. And then when you don't lead to the promised land, you don't get no check from me to help you with your bills or nothing like that. So you got all this desperation out there. And so what happens is it's churning out people who are even more embittered.
Yes.
More embattled.
Yes.
More hopeless than when they came in.
That, man.
And I mean, to me, that it's such a tragedy.
It is an incredible tragedy, considering the tragedy that we've already lived through in our communities during the recession. But I wanna tie that, what you just said, to how deep this thing is, and Shamir's question, because Bruce Llewellyn sold his last remaining stores in 1999 to the Dayton Hudson Corporation, that we now know as Target.
Right.
Target exists off the back of black grocery stores.
Now y'all hear that? See, we said this on our live stream earlier today, right? If y'all watch our live stream we did today, we patted ourselves on the back a little bit, and we need to do that because sometimes we feel sometimes folks don't understand what we offer here. But just I did not know that until you just said that.
I didn't know it till I read this thing.
That Target. Now all the black people that go to Target and stuff have no idea, assuming that Target is a white creation. Well, it is a white creation.
It is a white creation.
But not knowing the origins of Target. And we go in there and spend our money and not realizing that it's built off of the back of black business.
The Dayton Hudson Company was able to expand because it bought out a black grocery store. Now, there were other companies that Dayton Hudson bought out, but Llewellyn's grocery stores are an integral part of the story of Target's growth.
Sort of like we're an integral part of the history of America.
I was so
like
hoping
our
you were
ancestors was an integral part of whatever of what America is today.
You should have got that. You should have understood that. I hope you understood that. That these big, huge conglomerates, the Walmarts, the Targets, the chain stores, we're going to get to that. And why these small black independent companies, that they didn't fail because they didn't understand the market. See, people who are younger than we are don't realize that we've heard all these shaming tactics before, right? We've heard all these excuses for why black businesses fail at the rate that they do, and the excuse is always directed back at black people not knowing what the hell we're doing. That's all that is. But that masks the history, the actual history of how and why black businesses were destroyed. And it was done intentionally.
Exactly.
Because black economic success, not just stability, understand, success has always been a threat to white people, to white business people, always been a threat. So let me see if I can find really quick this other part of this article that points to the role of here we go. That points to the role of politics and how black business owners understood the role of politics in black economic stability. This is why these entrepreneur pushers who sit around and tell these people, tell black people, like you said, who are struggling, who are suffering, who are looking for hope and a way out, they tell these people they don't need to be involved in politics. All of our ancestors whose businesses were destroyed by politics knew better. They knew better. Let me show you this. So this is where retail chains come in. Small enterprises could not compete with the expansion of larger retail chains, shopping malls, franchises which develop. Black-owned funeral homes are a prime example. You have some experience with funeral home business. Yep. Between me and Abdus, we've had some jobs. We can tell you some stuff.
For real.
During the Civil Rights era, writes Suzanne Smith in her book To Serve the Living, funeral directors were usually among the few black individuals in any town or city who were economically independent and not beholden to the local white power structure. Yet today, and people go into black neighborhoods and they see the funeral home there and the funeral marquee that they've seen all their life on the funeral home building, right? Or the funeral parlor. Yet today, excuse me, and because of that, black people think that funeral homes are like the last bastion of black businesses. Yeah, not so much. Black-owned independent funeral homes are an imperiled institution. I didn't even know there was a funeral home chain. As national chains like Service Corporation International muscle out more and more businesses.
I could witness that. I worked in the black funeral business, and they're right. That's right.
Charlotte Clark, a black funeral home owner in Roanoke, Alabama, explains that these companies, quote, buy local folks' funeral parlors but leave up the signs and play it off like there's been no change, but call the shots from elsewhere. End quote. The National Funeral Directors and Morticians Association, which represents black funeral directors, has seen its membership decrease by 40% since 1997. You mean all of a sudden black people don't know how to bury folks?
Right. Exactly.
These people who have built that, come on. Reflecting on the past 3 decades, Bob Dickerson, CEO of the Birmingham Business Resource Center in Alabama, says, quote, had our institutions and businesses been maintained, had that money been plowed back into our communities, it would have meant a world of difference, end quote.
But they do what everybody else does. They take the money out and they never put nothing back in.
And they never put it back into the community.
Now, I'm going to tell you another thing that I don't know is covered in this report. But again, we have to address the racial wealth gap.
Yes.
And the reason why I say that is funeral homes and other black businesses which deal with our people, which deal with our people who have little capital, they can't earn money the way that other businesses do. What I'm saying is if you're a black funeral home and you're burying somebody from the neighborhood, more than likely they don't have insurance.
Right.
More than likely they're not going to have the money to pay the bill outright. So what happens is that more likely you have them pay on installments.
Right.
But your bills are still due. You know what I mean? See, folks, this is what we're talking about. It's the same way with the black grocery store. You're dealing with folks who have been deprived of wealth that have to come to your business and say, can I get this on credit? I'll pay you at the first of the month.
Right.
But yet your bills are still coming through. So, yeah, we have the black monopoly that happens. But because that a lot of these businesses are in areas of economically deprived people,
right,
that puts an extra strain. So somehow, what I'm saying is we can't always be upset when we find black businesses having to sell.
Right.
It's not that they sold out for the most part. It's the fact that because because the clientele are people who have been historically economically deprived, then you can't operate a business in the traditional sense that everybody else can.
And I've got proof of that. I look, and let me just tell you all, I went through these articles before this show. He didn't. That's how much we understand this issue. Just from understanding what causes and what contributes to the racial wealth gap. The forces that create that.
Right.
Once you understand that, the reason other things don't exist in the black community, it makes sense. It all makes sense.
It makes sense, yep.
So here's this article from...
No. See, this is the thing.
What?
I'll address it later.
Okay, so this is The Destruction of Black Wealth from the American Prospect. A more mainstream magazine, I guess. But this is from 2012. And this speaks to what you said. You were just saying. This was about unemployment in black America. At the time, it was 16%. But, like we said, now it's gone down further. But again, We're still not addressing the people who have been unemployed for a long time, stopped looking for work, and are looking for work now. Those people are not counted in unemployment numbers. This was true in 2012. The hardest of the hardcore unemployed are not even included in the official government statistics. The author said he's been to neighborhoods in Boston, Chicago, Detroit, Camden, New Jersey. We know about Camden, New Jersey, and other cities in which the majority, sometimes the vast majority, of working age population is jobless. Forget the smiling faces on television citing the latest hopeful economic statistics. Forget the assurances of self-styled black intellectuals that we are in some sort of marvelous post-racial era in which anybody can realize his or her dreams, Kanye. The black community is shouldering its way through an economic calamity. This was in 2012. More than a quarter of all black Americans are poor, as are more than a third of all black children. Doors of economic opportunity in the workforce and access to higher education and elsewhere are slamming shut at an alarming rate for many small African American businesses and for countless entrepreneurs. There's a story about Charles Walker earlier in this story. The downturn has been ruinous. The inevitable reduction in demand from a customer base struggling disproportionately with joblessness and the home foreclosure crisis came at the same time. This is another one of those perfect storms.
Right.
Came at the same time as a drastic curtailment in access to capital for most small businesses. For black businesses already chronically undercapitalized, the 1-2 punch was often fatal. They talk about home equity being a common source of collateral for small businesses, but we talked about black people even having homes having lower home equity than white people.
Right.
So they don't have as much, black people don't have as much money to draw on, even out of their homes, to start or save their businesses. It says here the Great Recession was much worse than anyone's idea of a rough patch. David Belk of Self-Help, a nonprofit lender that has concentrated on minority businesses, told me, quote, with this financial crisis, the amount of equity wiped out in minority communities is just jaw-dropping. And that is devastating to small businesses. Once the home equity collateral is wiped away, it's really hard to find anything to replace it with.
And thank you, Lisa. Just some of the comments. Lisa said, daily, Lisa Catlett, our friend.
Hey, Lisa.
She said, daily, I see stupid people say stupid things based on nothing but magical thinking. Linda Daly said, we keep the Asian beauty suppliers and nail salons in business. Why can't we support and pay good black businesses that provide necessary services? Well, that's not that simple, Linda. And that's what I wanted to talk about. It's not that simple. Shamir says, but how can they take the money and use that to build towards a black community? How can they take the money and use that to build towards a black community? We'll talk about that in another show. And Linda says, well, we have money for hair and nails, and these are excuses. And, you know, the thing of it is that we need to stop shaming poor black people about how they spend their money. Because, first of all, and I put that in my comment, is that we talk about the racial wealth gap that black people didn't create.
Thank you.
That poor black people didn't create. And so, you know, this has been centuries and decades in the making of government policies, local, state, and federal, which has determined, which was set on disenfranchising a certain group of people from enjoying the economic prosperity that this country is able to produce.
Exactly.
So we expect poor black people to live by this austerity philosophy that we place upon them, you know, that they're supposed to go day in and day out without enjoying none of the things that all of us enjoy. That, right. You know, and you know, I mean, getting your hair and nails done, what is that?
That's $35, $50.
Right. So, you know, or, you know, get Jordans, or you take your kids to McDonald's and stuff. And, you know, and we shame people for doing what we all do, you know, and so, but at the same time, we're not doing anything to confront the system that economically disfranchises them.
Right.
And, you know, if
Exactly.
the shoe fit, then, you know, if the shoe don't fit, then it don't fit. But what I'm saying is too many of us do that. Too many of us sit back and we watch black people online. And, you know, I've never seen that yet in our neighborhood. But they always pass these pictures around about black people standing in line waiting for the latest Jordans and say, oh, look at them. Look at how they're just wasting their money. But then you see white people standing outside of Best Buys waiting for the newest iPhone, and nobody says nothing about that.
Nope.
You know what I mean?
Nope.
So again, what we on Luqman, what we're here to do is to sit back and not pathologize poor black people.
Because that's all it is.
Because that's all it is.
Listen, let's explain something to you. Let's make this very clear, right? Black people going to the nail salon and getting their hair done cannot compare to Mark Zuckerberg getting initial working capital from his father in exchange for shares for Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg didn't start Facebook on his own. And when we're talking about working capital, there's not even an amount here. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands, maybe a couple $1 million. We know, because Jeff Bezos told it, that he started Amazon, which really did start in his parents' garage or some crap like that, with a $300,000 loan from his parents. Damn it to hell, that's not getting his hair done. That's not getting his nails done. That's a couple $100,000 from his mama and daddy that none of us, nobody who's getting their damn nails done every other week has. And don't tell me you can save up your money by not getting your hair done. It's going to take you 10 years to save that $20 to save up to get $300,000.
Well, let me ask you a question, because according to Linda, people spend $900 a month getting their hair done. $200 on nails, $300 on phones, etc.
If you keep bringing up anecdotal bullshit responses to why we are talking about the systemic reasons, wait a minute, let me come.
And money management is not our weakness. That is once another thing. And you know, if you watch the show, we done already disproved that.
We've already talked about this bullshit. Most black people don't have enough money to spend $900 getting their hair done. And people who are spending that kind of money getting their hair done, they don't want to start their business anyway, so we ain't talking about them. We're not talking about those people. We're not talking about those people who have all this disposable income that they can do that kind of shit with. We're talking about these people. Let me show you the kind of people we're talking about over here. Lord have mercy. We're talking about the people who were affected by the recession. Black people who didn't have anything anyway. Black people who were employed, who were still making less money than white people for the same job with the same level of experience. We're talking about black people with college degrees who were twice as likely to be unemployed than white people with the same type of degree, the same level of degree, the same years of experience. Still making less money than white people in the exact same employment position, because of systemic racism and the refusal of the federal government to enforce anti-discrimination laws in employment.
And you know what, man, what really kills me? People think you're stupid. I'm going to tell you why. People think you're stupid. You know, motherfucking well, ain't nobody in the hood spending no $900 on the hell? Right? No, what I'm saying is people think you stupid. You know what I mean? I mean, it's okay. It's like this. I have to laugh because, you know, people think you're dumb. Try to hijack this shit if you want to. But the thing of it is the fact that we had already went about money management. That's false. Black people not saving. That's false.
That's false.
And everything else, that's false. So, you know, so again, is the fact, talking about shaming, it is shaming. It is shaming. It's not wanting to look at the data. It's not wanting to acknowledge history. And it's also this whole thing about, well, you know, I did this, so why can't you? Without really looking at the story. And, you know, it's funny. When we talk about historical oppression, and when we start talking about the way which people smarter than us have already documented, people who don't want to recognize that for whatever reasons, the reasons on their own, I think, is the fact that they always say it's making excuses, right? But the fact of it is that they don't want to acknowledge the data. They don't want to acknowledge history. They don't want to acknowledge none of this other stuff. They want to take a few of the people who fell through the cracks, or who are able to get through the cracks, and then, again, you think it's not shaming, but it is. You want to pick a few people that come through the cracks, and then turn around and say, well, look at them, but what's about y'all? I don't know nobody, and that's why I know you don't live where we live, because I don't know anybody in all of these Chinese hair and nail salons that we can go into any day of the week and say, are you spending $900 a month on your hair? Are you spending $200 a month on your... No, nobody do that. And that's why I say, man, that you got some folks, man, who think that you're stupid, coming on here with this stuff that makes no damn sense. None. And you know it don't make no sense. So the thing of it is either you're serious about the conversation or you're not.
And these people aren't. These people are not serious about the conversation. Because, like you said, look, I am telling you, as a woman who grew up in this neighborhood and grew up with the Asian beauty supply stores. Oh, by the way, you know why the Asians have own all the beauty supply stores? Because they forcefully keep other people out of the market.
You must didn't even hear. They blocked this motherfucker because you didn't even hear what I said. I told you earlier that I had experience with business. You know what I mean? But
they never believed.
You know what I mean? But the thing of it is, but the thing of it is that we got important stuff to talk about.
And see, this is the problem: is people who think like that, who think like the Kanye West and the Boyce Watkins and the Dr. Claude. It's always black people's fault. But the history does not bear that out. It does not bear out that the reason black businesses haven't succeeded is because we fucked it all up and we don't know how to run business. We don't know how to save our money. We don't know how to invest. No, that's not true at all. This is from the article again, The Destruction of Black Wealth. During the recession, it was inevitable, as the recession and its dismal aftermath persisted, that black businesses would fold at a higher rate than normal. Like you said, the recession, because of higher unemployment among black people, higher home losses, higher reduction in home equity losses for black people didn't have the money to continue to support the few black businesses that existed. That's your customer base, not able to support your businesses. That's not black people's fault. The recession wasn't black people's fault. The recession was white people's fault. It was Wall Street's fault. The recession didn't happen the way it did to black people because black women were going out getting paying $900 a month for their hair. Get the hell out of here with that shit. So, official statistics are difficult to come by, but the hard evidence of shuttered shops, restaurants, and offices can be viewed in neighborhoods across the country. Now, see, when white businesses failed because of the recession, people looked at that and said, oh, that's the government. The government needs to fix that.
There's no excuses there.
There's no excuses there. They look at white Main Street businesses being shuttered, and they say, well, if the government could bail out Wall Street, then why can't the government bail out Main Street? But black people's response to black businesses failing for the same reason that white businesses failed is we're buying $900 in weave and getting on this. Get the hell out of here.
And it's tinged with racism too.
It is tinged with that white supremacist, black people are just fucked up and don't know how to do shit attitude. And we're not having it on this show.
Yeah.
Not only were black shuttered shops, restaurants, offices viewed in neighborhoods across the country were prey to the recession that hit black people extra hard. Black-owned auto dealerships have taken a terrible hit. By mid-2011, according to Automotive News, there were just 261 black-owned dealerships in the U.S., half as many as 3 years earlier. White-owned dealerships suffered a decline of 18% over the same period. So I guess those white-owned car dealership owners, I guess they were out getting their hair did at $900 a month too. This speaks.
I mean, it's funny because we're gonna stay on topic. Mm-hmm. But the thing of it is, man, I mean, we ain't got time to entertain that nonsense because that's what it is.
Because we are dying here.
Yeah,
and we are still having to explain basic shit to people who continue to want to believe that black people are pathologically deficient, and that's why we're in the situation we're in, when the history does not back that up
Nor
at
does the
all.
data backs it up.
Nor does the data. So I was trying to, before I got all pissed off, I was trying to get to this comment right here. At the same time that this carnage in existing businesses was occurring, African Americans who lost jobs in the recession and were desperate for work began trying to start businesses of their own. So kiss my brown black ass with this idea that black people don't know or don't want to start our own business and don't just stop it. The goal was to create a job for themselves, so Boyce Watkins ain't telling nobody nothing new when he tells black people you need to start your own business. The problem with people like Boyce Watkins and Dr. Claude Anderson and of their ilk is that these people made their money off the plantation already.
Right. But like Magic Johnson, the rest of them.
Look, so the newcomers have tended to lack business experience as well as capital. Now, lacking business experience, everybody who starts their own business, unless they're like a Mark Zuckerberg and a Jeff Bezos, who can get not only experience, but capital from their parents who are already in business.
Right.
So, of course, everybody who decides, I have a dream, I want to start my own business, and don't have anybody to mentor them, everyone who starts their own business lacks business experience. But black people like whoever this person is on our page will look at this one sentence and say, see, that's why black people can't. A few mainstream lenders and few mainstream lenders have been willing to help. This speaks to the disappearance of black banks. This is why black banks are important. Because a black bank will lend money, is more likely to lend money to black entrepreneurs than a Wells Fargo, than a JP Morgan, than a Bank of America, than a TD Bank. That's why black banks are important. Whew, I need to calm down a little bit. Let me see what else is in here. Oh, no. I wanted to get to politics. Because I'm telling y'all, I have just, when I was reading these articles and I was connecting the importance of black economics to black politics, and I learned that this was something our ancestors knew. They not only knew it, they practiced it. Black businesses were important, and this is why black businesses were destroyed systematically the way they were. Politics is incredibly important to black people in this country. I don't really care if white people feel like they don't need to back black issues. I don't care. We do. Because it ain't affecting them. It's not affecting them not the way it's affecting us.
Right.
It's literally life and death for us in every aspect of our life. And it includes entrepreneurship. And it's like a two-way kind of, it's a symbiotic relationship. Black people needed politics to protect their businesses. The same way white people use politics to protect their businesses. Let me find the part in the article where they talk about the legislation during the 70s that actually started during the 70s. Doggone it. Is it way down in here? Yes. Here it is. This is how white people use politics to protect their businesses. After the late 1970s, both Democrats and Republicans generally retreated from the long-standing tradition of using anti-monopoly laws to foster economic and political equality. I don't care if you don't know what monopoly laws are. At this point, it doesn't even make any difference to me because we're gonna give people the links to these articles, and you need to read them.
Right, exactly.
What you need that's the homework. What you need to understand is why anti-monopoly laws and how anti-monopoly laws helped foster economic equality for black business owners. So there was a time before 1970 that black business owners and white business owners got together to fight the rise in corporate monopolies.
Right.
Like Walmart, Target. And they did that because they knew that monopolies would destroy small businesses. Black business owners knew that was especially true for them. So black business owners understood the need to be involved in politics.
Exactly.
Owning a business was not enough. Economic security was not enough. They needed politics to protect their economic security. White people have done that the entire time this country has been an incorporated entity. So, since then, successive administrations have evaluated mergers only for their efficiency and by and large have resisted antitrust actions except in the most egregious instances of collusion and price fixing. Some members of the black community applauded these changes because, you know, some of us don't have no sense. Because we think we're going to make as much money as white people do.
Right.
And we don't understand that's not how they play the game. In a 1986 interview, Dr. William Bradford, chairman of the University of Maryland Finance Department, said, quote, "Selling out will result in gaining future expansion opportunities. Tell that to the man who owned Park Sausage.
Right.
Tell that to the man who the Target, the now Target Corporation, bought out his grocery stores. Tell that to Bob Johnson,
who sold BET.
The
Viacom.
Tell that to the black who was it? Johnson and Johnson company.
Remember Famous Amos cookies?
Famous Amos. All of those companies, the Johnson and Johnson company, that was the premier company for black hair care products.
Oh yeah, Afro Sheen.
Afro Sheen and all. Yeah. Did they get any expanded opportunities from the monopolies that bought them out? No, they did not. That's not how monopolies work. So, he said black businesses will move up the hierarchy and control more resources. That's not ever how they work, not for us. But other voices expressed worry. An editorial in the Atlanta Daily World noted mergers don't always make for better service or lower prices to the customer, and one certain result of weakening the antitrust laws is more and more mergers. There's more information here about how mergers hurt black businesses, but I want to highlight really quickly the other reason why black business is so important to black people and why black businesses were destroyed.
Right.
This is really why. Because during Reconstruction, during the Civil Rights Movement, now, we talked before and we talked tonight about how white business owners have always been threatened by black business success, black economic success. They never wanted us as competitors. White business owners have always wanted to corner the market and never wanted to let us in. And they would go so far as to lynch us and burn down our entire communities to make sure that we would never in competition with them.
But another thing, again, and we spoke about this on this show too, there also has been alliances made between groups to keep us out. Yes. There has been alliances made between white banks and Asian business owners in order to get property in black neighborhoods, and they don't inform the black business owners that already have businesses, which has happened in Harlem, which has happened in places in New York. You know, they don't inform white banks, don't inform the black business owners about the property that they have on their books.
Right.
And they have one incident, we spoke about this on the show, where they even passed out secret notices to Korean and Asian business owners up in New York. I think it was in Harlem. And they did not inform the black business owners. They didn't even inform them that this meeting was going on.
Right. They didn't even let them know about the meeting.
They didn't even let them know about the meeting. And so one of the council people up there, I think his name was Clarence Darrow, but I remember he's a longtime council member. He was the first one to talk about it. How black business owners was coming to him saying, we didn't even know about this meeting. The bank sent all of these flyers specifically to Asian businesses. So there has even been alliances made between groups of people to disenfranchise us. So if you see that the reason why we're angry when we run into some stupid shit about nails and hair and stuff, that's why. Because we realize that they're bottom feeding. They're bottom feeding at the bottom of the Anacostia with those type of excuses. With those type of with that type of reasoning about black economics situations.
Right.
You're bottom feeding, you're a catfish.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because if for real, what's really the problem, it's not money management. The problem is that you got forces out there that have decided that capitalism has to have someone to exploit.
And it's us.
So when they sit up there and they determine who is the fodder for this raw capitalist machine, then they sit back and say, who do we want to fulfill that?
That's right.
And so that's what they do. It ain't got nothing to do with Jordans. It got nothing to do with welfare mothers or mothers who are welfare taking their kids to McDonald's once a month. It got none of that bottom feeding stuff that so many of these so-called black and white respectability people who really don't want to deal with the real issue. That's what all of this is about. They really don't want to tackle the real. It's so easy to blame the victim,
man,
than to deal with those forces that is responsible for this in the beginning. It's easy to blame the victim. It's easy to blame that person who's in an abusive relationship, saying, well, why didn't you just leave? As opposed to dealing with those things that's causing the abuse.
Right.
You know, so this is the thing. We are not going to tolerate victim blaming here.
No.
You know what I mean? Because really, all of this stuff with the Cosbys and the Kanyes and all them, first of all, it shows you how ignorant they are. And then number two, it shows that they're doing nothing but bottom feeding.
That's that is all they're doing, and they're continuing to perpetuate this perception of black people, even black people who do try to start their own business as intellectually inferior, because that's all that is. It just continues to point to black people as pathological and stupid, as not as good as white business owners. That's all it is. As if white people don't spend, like you said, a whole lot of money on stupid shit. But we're talking about
all you got to do is watch any of them damn reality shows where you know where they got where they have people come in and turn their damn tree house into a damn winter wonderland and all this stuff, but they got money to do that.
Exactly.
But the thing of it is that you can't fault people who don't have the money and then want them to live by this damn draconian austerity thing, where you taking a piece of bread and be like, you get a little crumb here, but you got the rest of this though over here, and you still hungry.
And you telling those people you can start that business with that piece of crumb.
Yeah,
because you need to get off the plantation if you want more of that crumb. And the very people telling you to get off the plantation, they've already made their money off their plantation job. So right. And another thing too is that, and this is, and like I said, this person is not the only one who says it. They're not unique. What I'm saying is that you got certain people who look at their individual circumstances. But we're not talking about your individual circumstance. We're not talking about how you made it. Yep.
What we're talking about is a systemic thing. We're talking about a structural thing in place that prevents the vast majority of people from gaining those type of opportunities. We're not talking about incidences.
Right.
You feel me? We ain't talking about incidences. We're talking about that there is structural things in place that keep everybody who starts from this line. Everybody starts from this line. And they go up, and then when you look at at everybody in that line, and you look at their individual circumstances, and you find out that, okay, this person's brilliant, but, he come from poor parents.
Right.
This person's not as brilliant, but then his parents own a corporation.
Right.
They're able to have social capital that even though he's dumb as fuck, Pop can make a phone call and get his ass in Harvard.
Right.
Even though he don't deserve to be there.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Then you got another young man from Southeast DC who's brilliant, but you know, circumstances of birth doesn't afford him the same advantages as the one who parents can get him into any university because they have the social capital to do it.
Right.
So, you know, so this is what we're talking about. We're not talking about how you made it, because your example don't mean jack nothing.
It does
when it comes to when it compares to everybody else.
I mean, when we talk about systemic issues, we're talking about most of the people, most of the black people who want to start a business. Like the statistic that we shared earlier for all of the black woman-owned businesses. 98% of them are one employee, just the person who started the business. Now, we can look at that and say one of those people out of that statistic of all of those black women businesses, we can try to pull one business out of there that's a black woman who employs 20 people. But that's one business out of the 98% of woman-owned black businesses who only have enough money, receipts, profit, capital, access to hire more than herself. In the bit, we don't traffic in that kind of stuff. That's ridiculous. So let's get into this politics, and then we're gonna let y'all go, because we gotta go to sleep. This is back to the decline of black businesses from the Washington Monthly. To be sure, many black leaders during the civil rights era recognized that economic independence was a necessary but not sufficient condition for securing full rights as citizens. I'm sorry, No, this was before the civil rights era. This was between the 1890s and the 1920s, when black businesses began to emerge. When do we say the first massacre, the first destruction of a black community was? 1912.
Right.
So between 1890 and around 1920, all these black leaders understood that economic independence, black people starting their own businesses, was necessary, but it wasn't enough.
Right.
It wasn't enough for securing full rights as citizens. Unlike their white counterparts, this is why, unlike their white counterparts, independent black business owners were vulnerable to the brutality of lynching, to voter suppression at the polls, and to the plundering of black business districts by white supremacists. Listen, y'all don't have to believe Jacqueline and Abdus if you don't want to, but take issue with the Washington Monthly.
There you go. That's it.
Take issue with the history of the NAACP, because that's where this information came from. Yet many black leaders nonetheless saw that the fight for racial justice also required expanded economic independence, which in turn depended on containing market concentration. We were fighting monopolies back in the 1800s.
Isn't that something? Wow.
We understood. You want to go back to talking about black people don't know how to run businesses? We understood the threat of chain stores and monopolies when we first started businesses. In the early 20th century, groups like the National Negro Business League, we had a whole league of businesses for Negroes.
Wow.
For instance, supported anti-chain store legislation. This is how black business owners understood the need for politics. They supported anti-chain store legislation as a way to preserve black Americans' economic self-sufficiency and freedom. What do we keep saying over and over again about how you need politics to protect your economic interests?
Because government is the ones that can do it.
I'm going to cuss again in a minute. As an editorial in the black newspaper New Journal and Guide bemoaned, quote, chain stores are constantly draining every dollar every week from all of our southern communities, never putting any of it back so that the communities can use it again, end quote. Indeed, many black leaders supported these laws, even though the Ku Klux Klan and many racist white populists also championed them for their own reasons. In 1928, W.E.B. Du Bois validated the black community's embrace of anti-monopolism when he wrote, "To ask the individual colored man to sell meat, shoes, candy, books, cigars, clothes, or fruit in competition with the chain store is to ask him to commit slow but almost inevitable economic suicide." So you gonna argue with Du Bois? Argue with Jacqueline and Abdus all you want to. Talk about weaves and hair and nails and Jordans all you want to, but you're going to argue with W.E.B. Du Bois, who said the exact same thing in 1928 that we're telling you right now.
But that's how these people are. They would argue with him.
They would. You're right. You're right. They would argue with him. You're right. In 1932, the Associated Negro Press and the National Negro Business League, with the cooperation of the U.S. Department of Commerce, printed a newspaper column called Business and Industry. One article in the series noted that, quote, "an embarrassing problem confronts the 70,000 or more Negro-owned individual enterprises in the U.S. today. Big business, which is not a new concept, perceptibly, it means they know what they're doing. They knew it. It was intentional. Perceptibly handicaps the small industrial businesses, in which category? Every Negro enterprise.
Now, because I know we got to close soon, but I just want to say this before I lose the thought, is that I think that one of the reasons that we experienced this great loss of business during the Reagan era and even during this time is the same reason that we have lost a lot of political gain. Is because we have not yet understood that people are playing for blood when it comes to us.
That's right.
We approach politics as if, politics is fought on the altar of the church. And we bring church demeanor to secular politics. Now I'm gonna say that again because I think that y'all ain't hearing me on this. We're bringing church demeanor, church demeanor to secular politics when politics is a blood sport.
That's right.
And politics showed us it was a blood sport by the way that it decimated our business class or our business base during the time of the Reagan administration, and even during the time when we was fighting for against monopolies at that time. So respectability politics. This is why I am so against it when it comes to politics, because it hamstrings you.
Yes.
It hamstrings you. It ties you down. And what happens is that everybody else got the gloves off.
Yep.
But we got the gloves on because we want to play nice, but nobody playing nice with us.
And we're sitting here asking for permission.
Right. And so what happens is we lose in politics, we lose in business, and we lose socially because we haven't understood yet that we got to take the gloves off. Because sometimes people only understand street. And politics is street.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and all of y'all know where I'm coming from, because I know where y'all from. Y'all from where I'm from. Sometimes the street is the street, and sometimes you got to speak the language of the street, and politics is always the language of the street. And we have not yet learned that yet.
Nope.
That politics is a blood sport. So no, you can't come on here and talk about that it's the fault of the poor black woman, single mother, who just wants to give her kid a treat, that she's the problem. No, you can't tell me that it's the poor working black man and poor working black woman that want to treat their family to a movie, or they want to buy, or they want to take them to a restaurant with their hard-earned labors, of that they the problem. No, the problem is as a racist system that we refuse to dismantle. That's the problem. And until we can get on board with that, then don't sit up here and tell me about what's wrong with poor black folk. Don't sit up here and tell me that. And until we learn that you got to take the gloves off and you got to get down and dirty in the street like they doing, and stop worrying about bringing everybody else along, and realize that we got to fight for ourselves and that we got to protect what's ours, then I think we finally start to understand how this game is played in America.
Because let me tell you something. You are so right. Because during the civil rights movement, black business owners understood then how important they were to this blood sport of politics. See, black business owners in the 50s and 60s provided not just jobs to people who were involved in the civil rights movement, who, if they were working for white people, they would have been fired.
Exactly.
Because a lot of white business owners would not allow people who were supportive of the civil rights movement to remain in their employ. So black businesses played a key role for black activists, providing support for their families while these people went out and fought for their civil rights.
Mm-hmm.
Black business owners also provided key material support to the civil rights movement because they understood that white society wasn't going to provide it. So here are a few examples of how black business not only understood, like we just talked about a few minutes ago, understood how important politics was to protecting their economic security, but black business owners also understood how important their services were to politics and advancing politics for black people. In the 50s and 60s, in Tallahassee, black grocery store owner Daniel Speed bankrolled a bus boycott similar to that in Montgomery. Never heard that man's name, did you? Didn't know that there was a bus boycott in Tallahassee similar to one in Montgomery. And his shop served as a meeting ground for black leaders. In Biloxi, Mississippi, Gilbert Mason, owner of Modern Drug Store, led a wade-in against the whites-only section of a federally funded Gulf Coast beach. Federally funded, racially segregated beach. In his autobiography, Mason wrote, quote, "Pharmacists represented an economically independent class of black businessmen who might have been thought difficult for the white establishment to control. Black business owners were causing problems for the white business owners. In many cases, the black-owned pharmacy was itself a nexus in black communities, where churches were the meeting places for a lot of civil rights movements. Black pharmacies were too, because everybody needed a prescription for something.
Yeah, and plus pharmacies at that time had soda fountains and
all
stuff.
kinds of soda fountains and has the lunch counters and all kinds of other stuff. Funeral home owners emerged as another powerful block of civil rights activists. In 1956, funeral homeowner William Shortridge co-founded the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights, a group that sought to end employment discrimination and abolish segregation in public accommodations. Gaston, who built his business empire as the owner of the Smith & Gaston Funeral Home, threatened to transfer his accounts from a white-owned bank. This is when you're black and you understand the power of the dollar. Threatened to transfer his accounts from a white-owned bank unless it removed a whites-only sign from a water fountain. In 1963, Gaston lent Martin Luther King Jr. a room at his Gaston Motel. Soon known as the War Room, it was there that King decided to submit himself to arrest in Birmingham, a galvanizing moment in the civil rights movement. Listen, I could keep going on and on showing you stuff in these articles, but we don't have time, and class is over, doggone it. Look. Your homework is to read these articles. It's only 2 of them, aside from the report that we provided for you last week. We're going to give you the report again, what we get wrong about closing the racial wealth gap. But we would like to leave you with this thought. Like my husband said, there are a few things, I can count on one hand, things that make us that angry. But the type of crap that this person spewed on this show tonight, that's one of those things. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that black people are angels, because we're human beings and we do messed up stuff too, just like everybody else. But to continue to perpetuate these white supremacist ideas of black pathology that is unique to us and that don't extend to other people who who experience the same kinds of economic calamities that we do, but not as bad, that's not going to be tolerated here. We don't tolerate white supremacy on this show, regardless of who spews it.
Without it being called out.
We just don't. We're going to call it out, and we're going to try to help people understand why your thinking is problematic. But if you persist, we are under no obligation to continue to allow those kind of people to take up our space and
or
our
to be
time.
nice to you.
Yeah, we're just not. This is our stuff. We're here to educate, and if you don't want to learn, then there's the door. But this situation, this economic situation that we are facing in this country as black people, it is too critical for us to sit here and play nice with people who are continuing to perpetuate these false ideas and these racist ideas that all black people need to do is invest or start a business without understanding the historical context, the history of why black business is almost non-existent today. That history is in these articles. Excuse me. So when Kanye West says that we can't be enslaved mentally for another 400 years, he's talking to himself. He's not talking to anybody who he thinks is thinking in the past. He is talking to himself. He is just too mentally enslaved himself to understand how ignorant he is. And if somebody wants to share this live stream with him, please do and tag us in it. We ain't scared. And the Boyce Watkins and the Dr. Claude Andersons and the Magic Johnsons and anybody else who believes, and all these people that I used to go to church with talking about all you need to do is buy a home and invest and save $20 a month, and these people we know who will join our program. And look, starting your own business is great, investing money is great, saving money is great. We're just here to tell you that those things, doing those things, is not going to address the economic peril that black people in. Because it wasn't black people who put black people in this economic peril. There was something I meant to add. Oh, that's right. When you understand this history, when you understand the history of how black business and why black business was eviscerated in this country, you then understand the problem with stories like this. I know y'all want to be real happy about this.
All right, we only got 1 minute.
We just have 1 minute. I know that you all want to be really happy about this story. But if you understand the history of the evisceration of black business in this country, the role that politics, white supremacy, and racism played in destroying black businesses, and how these idiotic, racist, respectability politics, ahistorical ideas about black people's mental deficiency and inability to start our own businesses just continues to perpetuate this strangling of black economic success.
Right.
When you understand that, you would be pissed off at stories like this.
Oh, don't tell me about that story.
And that's where we're going to leave it tonight, y'all. Thank you very much for joining us on Coffee, Current Events, and Politics in Luqman Nation live tonight. We will provide the links to all of the articles that we referenced. We will be live on Spreaker Saturday night with Pitbull and Politics.
Yes.
We will... What are we doing after that? Next week, we are relaunching Brick by Brick. I promise. Next Wednesday.
No, we're going to make sure you relaunch Brick by Brick.
I promise. Just couldn't do it this week because things got really, really sketchy. But just be careful what you say about black people and our behavior.
Right.
If you don't know the history of what got us here, you are not qualified to comment on black people's behavior.
Even if you are black.
Even if you are, especially if you black. Especially if you black. Anyway, thanks so much, y'all, for joining us tonight. We appreciate you joining us. As always, be real good to each other. Peace. You doing? What are you? What are you doing? You just don't. You just want to make me laugh, so I don't go to bed mad.